What's up, gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel. So in this one, we're going to cover a topic that's been going viral in the last few weeks, which is the topic of looksmaxing. And I'm gonna tell you guys here that looksmaxing, for the most part, is not going to save your dating life. Now, let's be clear up front here. Improving your looks is not a bad idea. It's a very good idea. You know, having a skincare routine, having a better grooming routine, having a better haircut, a better sense of style, all of those things, they help, because all of those, they can open doors that before they were just not open to you. But I'm not going to talk about these things here. I'm going to talk about looks maxing to the very extreme. Think about punching yourself in the face to look more attractive, lengthening your legs, doing very expensive surgeries, that sort of thing. And I do not want to talk about the behavior, because everyone else out there is already telling you that it's not a good idea to do these kinds of things, that it's way too extreme, and that it costs a lot of money, and that you might regret it later on, but you might not be able to reverse that decision that you made at that time. What I want to talk about here is the psychology behind it for those men. Because when you understand the psychology behind it, you can better understand where these men come from, and you can avoid falling into that same trap yourself. Because for most men that are into looks maxing, it's not even about becoming more attractive. And it's also not even that much about attraction. It's more about circumventing the rules of the game. Because men jump into the looks maxing thing because they think, if I optimize enough, then I do not have to approach women anymore. And if I look good enough, then no woman will reject me. And if I really max out on my look, then results are basically guaranteed at that point. So what men are really looking for is not to look better. What they are looking for is certainty in dating. And certainty is something that I talk about a lot on this channel for that same reason. Because men love the idea that there is such a thing as certainty in dating. But that idea that there is just a 1 + 1 = 2 formula in dating is just totally ridiculous. Things are not working that way. Of course, you can improve your chances drastically by learning the right behaviors in dating. Also, part of it is maxing out on your look, working on your presence, your presentation. All of that, it helps. But there's never any guarantee or any certainty in dating. Because the irony is that because men are latching on to the idea of certainty and guarantees in dating, they actually shoot themselves in the foot, because a big part of dating is accepting that there are never any guarantees. So let's first jump into the first driver behind this whole looks maxing thing, which is that men want to avoid rejection. The whole looks maxing thing basically sells men the idea that there is such a thing as results without risk. Looks maxing basically sells men the idea that once you look good, you don't need awkward conversations or embarrassment anymore. Everything will be smooth sailing for you. But the truth is that there is no version of reality where you become so optimized in dating that rejection disappears. Because even high status guys that have a lot of fame and a lot of money, they still get rejected. And that's why a lot of men, they are approaching dating with the wrong mindset. And the second driver behind this whole looks maxing thing is that men want to park the responsibility for their lack of results somewhere else, basically. Because men obsess over jawlines and just not looking masculine enough or not looking like a Chad, but they will not say, well, I didn't really behave in a strong way when I was interacting with her. I was too needy and I was socially awkward. And they will also not say, well, I just play it way too safe with her. Because all of these, they are quite harsh reflections for a man. Because once you say, well, I don't lead, I'm needy, I'm socially awkward, then you need to start working on your identity and your social skills. And that's why looks maxing gives men the impression that there is nothing wrong with them besides their looks. But in 99% of cases, there's just a lot of things that you need to work on in your identity, your personality, the way that you approach things. And that brings me to the third driver, which is that looks maxing gives you fake progress instead of real dating skill. Because men will spend hours standing in front of a mirror looking at their jawline and how good they look and the small little tweaks that they can make to look a little bit better. But they do not realize that for you to become good at dating, you just need to expose yourself to risks. You need to get embarrassed sometimes. And to learn how to become really good at dating, you also need humility. But all of these things, they are not comfortable for modern men. So that's why you see with looks maxing, these men, they are all focused on the small little tweaks while never really changing any fundamental through really working on your skill and building up internal self-worth and a level of confidence that is really magnetic to women. And it brings me to the fourth driver, which is that looks maxing makes you avoid masculine initiation. Because for men to grow up and to become more masculine and therefore also to become more attractive to women, they need a kind of rites of passage. Now, back in the day, men used to go to war or they used to work in very shitty jobs, like in coal mines and that type of stuff. And that hardened men because that stuff was very uncomfortable. And doing all of that really masculine work, it humbled men and it made them stronger in general. But in the modern world, there is no initiation for men because most men are never exposed to any risk in their lives. And because nowadays men are so risk averse, they do not risk rejection. They do not risk leading, even though they might get rejected. And men avoid building tension with women, because all of these things, they might make men a little bit uncomfortable. Looksmaxing is basically a way for men to circumvent all of the dirty work that they need to do to become a proper man that is attractive to women. Basically, men, they want to work a little bit on their jawline so that women ultimately will come to them and do all the work for them. And also a thing that drives the looksmaxing thinking is the victim mentality that it enforces. Because many men will believe that they were just born very unlucky. And because if you are unlucky by being born, then you are also not responsible for your dating results. And the problem is that most men do not have a looks problem. They have a masculinity and sexual polarity problem. Because men will still communicate with women and be super nice to her. They will play it super safe and be super agreeable with her. And they will avoid any form of sexual tension. And that's why you can see even men that are really handsome, that they still fail in dating. And it's not because of their looks, but it's because of how they behave. It's because they are needy to women and they put women on a pedestal. So that's it, guys. Looksmaxing is not a bad idea. It's a very good idea. But it's a very small component of the things that you need to work on to become really successful in dating. Because looksmaxing can open the door to more dating opportunities, but you still need to know how to lead beyond that. Looksmaxing is not a way for you to replace leadership or confidence or proper social skills. Looksmaxing ultimately is nothing but a tool that you use together with other things. So that's it. Subscribe to the channel. And if you guys are ready to really take action in your dating life and get the results that you want, then feel free to book a call with me with the link in the bio. And that's it. Peace.